Today we're talking about a fearsome, despotic, intergalactic subjugator in the DC Comics universe, a cardinal conqueror known as Despero. Let's talk about him. First, thanks for watching JLS Comics. Hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with all of our weekly content, and with that out of the way, let's jump right into the story. Created by Mike Sekowsky and Gardner Fox, the vile villain Despero has been around since the beginnings of the Justice League of America. In fact, he graces the cover of 1960's Justice League of America issue 1, their first issue of their solo title after debuting in Brave and the Bold issue 28. But let's back up. Despero the Conqueror's homeworld is not Earth, but a dual-sunned planet in the Arcturus sun system called Kalinor. In pre-crisis continuity, this was in another dimension, but afterwards became part of the main reality. Kalinor was once home to a humanoid civilization that was devastated by thermonuclear war and the fallout, both figuratively and literally, from those wars were that many people were obliterated, but those that did survive, the now irradiated people of Kalinor, were then mutated into a variety of new races that warred and battled for superiority. One particular race, those that gained telepathic powers, rose triumphant from the ash and devastation that reigned supreme and enslaved the others. This race, however, were individually motivated, and so this sense of competition set families against each other in a Game of Thrones, a not-so-civil civil war, as families vied for power. Despero's mom tried to kill her husband, Despero's father, but failed, so he killed Despero's mom. Then when Despero was old enough, he killed his own father, the last to remain, and he took the throne for himself. Despero and his powerful, hypnotic third eye took the throne and ruled with an iron fist, locking down Kalinor and bending the will of the Kalinorians to his might. He was a terrifying leader, but at this point still rather unimposing, but that would change later on. A Kalinorian scientist named Jasonar ended up fleeing the planet with a lady named Sarana in a special space vessel laden with materials that Jasonar hoped he could use to build a device that would negate Despero's super energy weapons, rendering them useless so a planet-wide coup could take place to take back their world for the people. The pair fled and found their way to a planet in the Milky Way, a third rock from the sun called Planet Earth. Despero tracked Jasonar down and followed him to Earth. And on Earth, Barry Allen was driving along a country road when he encountered a mysterious blue glow. Then, Jasonar and Sarana at a remote farmhouse. They pleaded their case, and so Barry Allen, the Flash, helped them out, calling upon the JLA in the process. Flash hid them in a cave so they could keep working, then went to the JLA's headquarters, which is when he found an entranced Justice League assembled, and with Despero now at the table too. The blue glow protected Flash from succumbing to Despero's mind control, so fashioning himself a sportsman, Despero proposed a board game between himself and Flash. Despero had him pick a card and move a JLA piece on a board, but if he pulled a card for a disaster square, Despero said he would transport a member each time to another dimension, never to return. If Flash lost the whole league, Despero would win, and they'd all remain his prisoners. Despite the 63-1 odds, the game was rigged in Despero's favor. He was using his third eye powers to always make the disaster square number always appear on the cards that Flash pulled from the deck. The League were all transported to planets and other dimensions while Despero searched for Jasonar, who was still building his anti-weapon device in the cave. Despero did end up finding Jasonar, but Snapper Carr had hit aboard Despero's ship and turned the device on the despot, draining him of his energy. At the end of their first confrontation, the JLA had Jasonar take Despero back as a prisoner. His punishment was a rehab program where Despero's third eye was surgically removed. Despero then became a model citizen, but his third eye was secretly coming back via regenerative powers. He was assigned to a scientific research lab where he plotted an accident to happen, and then Despero disappeared in the ensuing explosion. Despero showed up again in issue 26, now plotting to take over not one Earth, but 3 versions of Earth. There he trapped Snapper Carr in some chronal energy to age him up, and when he called an emergency JLA meeting, Despero turned the whole JLA elderly, then attacked and captured them within massive hourglasses. He wanted to force them to watch him conquer and enslave all the Earths, so he sent the JLA to Earths where dinosaurs and animals became dominant life forms. The Flash made friends with a dinosaur who happened to have a car, and the dino whipped its tail at Despero and took him down. On another Earth, Despero took Green Lantern's power ring, but it became useless after not being charged for 24 hours, and so without knowing that, he lost that power and Despero went down. Then Aquaman and Martian Manhunter took out the third Despero in a bathysphere in a water world with help from some shark friends. Meanwhile, Green Arrow, Wonder Woman, and the Atom were still back at the JLA headquarters when an old Superman lumbered in, and this was revealed to be Despero in disguise. So Wonder Woman roped Despero around the neck with her lasso of truth and forced him to return the JLA home and to their proper ages. Many years later, Superman was stolen and transported to a planet called Circus just before Despero showed up, intending to either take their cosmic cannon or destroy the planet. Superman flew up to meet Despero, punching his super ship with a mighty blow, and this race pitted Superman and fake JLAers against Despero. Meanwhile, the real JLA were out in space looking for Superman when two Krill aliens captured them, and Despero then had them fight each other over and over again until Supergirl was able to defeat Despero by tricking their alien captors. The JLA then took Despero prisoner. And then in JLA issues 177 and 178, Despero ended up forcing Martian Manhunter into a game of chess which the JLA had to rescue him from. And then came the massive, sweeping, reality-altering Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985 that resulted in the DC multiverse being condensed down to a single, unified DC universe. Despero appeared in that event in issue 10 where he was on frigid Earth S with a bunch of others when a fight broke out as they attempted to guard the Marvel family. That is, until Billy Batson said the magic word and transformed. And in JLA 247, we learned Despero had been imprisoned on a planet called Takron Galtos, but Despero had other plans, and so he broke out. He took a ship and flew back home to Kalinor. And there he ascended the spire of the Flame of Pytar, a fire burning since the days of nuclear holocaust. It was said that those not destroyed by the flame would be transformed and gain power and wisdom beyond imagination, but with a catch. If the flame went out, the wielder would lose it all. Despero then entered the flame and washed over with a pain beyond pain and a pain descending into madness. But Despero laughed in the face of that pain because he knew he would soon have the power to defeat the JLA. Despero emerged from the flames of Pytar triumphant, more powerful than ever. His bio headdress rotated into a mohawk, and he donned regalia fit for an alien king, calling himself Despero the Reborn, Despero the Destroyer, and he vowed to crush the JLA and make them whisper his name in terror. Despero then took a ship and obliterated the JLA's orbital satellite headquarters, and then he jumped down to Earth with his own body, taking on the full fire and fury of atmospheric re-entry. Despero made planetfall in the forest of northwest Maine, and then he went to Gotham City and caused havoc there, summoning Batman, Vixen, and the entire League. Batman was able to keep Despero distracted and fighting while others went to try to extinguish the flame of Pytar, now burning bright in a skyscraper, and Gypsy and the others used all their power to take him on, but it was Vibe who went into the tower to put out the flame, finally putting a stop to another of Despero's rampages. Despero was dispelled and disappeared in a waft of smoke and smoldering remains. And that was 1986. 4 years later, Despero was able to pull the fractured remnants of his former body back together again. He came back for 1990's Justice League America issue 38. This reconstituted Despero immediately headed back to Earth, now more determined than ever to defeat those who humiliated him, the JLA. As he crashed down, Despero was enveloped by a United Nations flag, and the flag draped over Despero's shoulders like a cape. He then ripped apart a JLA member named Steel, who was on life support, and then targeted Gypsy, going after Gypsy's parents in suburbia and brutally murdering them in the rubble of their own home. When Gypsy came home, Despero attacked her too, which is when an alert went out to the Justice League, and Despero was about to murder her, but Martian Manhunter showed up to stop him. Despero then took on this new iteration of the JLA and started taking them down one by one. Martian Manhunter realized it wouldn't be by power, but by outsmarting him that they could defeat Despero, so Martian Manhunter told him he was going to help him destroy the JLA. Despero ended up taking them all down and then conquered the Earth and destroyed it, or so he thought. Martian Manhunter tricked Despero's mind into thinking that he had killed them all, and so Despero flew off satisfied in what he thought happened, his thirst for revenge finally quenched. Despero was then reverted to a fetus form, and Martian Manhunter put him in a stasis chamber, much to Gypsy's chagrin. This fetus was traded to an alien space trader named Manga Khan in exchange for a little robot named Elron. Manga Khan leased Despero out when he aged up as a killer, for alien races to take on their foes. But in one war, his control was destroyed, and so Despero, free again, flew off to find the JLA. And while away, Manga Khan hired the intergalactic bounty hunter Lobo to go after his weapon. Lobo pulled up the file on the 8-foot 5-inch 405-pound Despero, which said he destroyed 16 worlds, conquered 46 worlds, and murdered over 5 billion sentient beings. Despero landed on Earth and demanded Martian Manhunter and the JLA show themselves. The magenta monster destroyed Times Square, battling the JLA until Guy Gardner and Lobo showed up to join the fray. The battle went to the Hudson River, and as the JLA and Lobo bickered, Martian Manhunter took Despero on again, with Despero throwing him through a building. Despero was about to kill Martian Manhunter with a blast from his third eye, but Booster Gold's force shield protected Martian Manhunter and deflected the blast back to Despero. Despero then battled with Booster Gold and his team called the Conglomerate, along with the Justice League and Lobo. And then a Green Lantern named Kilowog showed up with a remote control and revealed that robot Elron they got from Manga Khan was able to shoot his mind into Despero's brain, taking over Despero's body from within. He later said as long as his collar is intact, then Elron will be in control of Despero's body, and from there he went back to Manga Khan. After a while, the now good Despero returned to Earth and joined John Jones' new Justice League task force, Despero was now sporting a 90s extreme era uniform with pads and spikes and a big gun slung over his back. Together they took on the Overmaster and then argued with the Justice League International, with Despero squaring off against Elongated Man. But they all teamed up to fight Overmaster in snowy Tibet. Despero lined up with Booster Gold and Lionheart for the assault, and after that, as the factions argued and vied for power, Despero was just happy to sit around eating a box of donuts. Despero and the team then helped Vandal Savage and even went back to his island Crystal Palace with him. We learn that each day Elrond strives to maintain control over Despero's incredible strength, but after Savage's betrayal became apparent, Elrond let the inner beast loose. Savage charged up his own place to detonate it, so Despero volunteered to go into the core to find the relay. "I am Elrond, Gypsy," he said. "You are all my friends, and I don't intend to let you die." Gypsy and Martian Manhunter then went inside Despero's mind to talk with him. Despero shut down, but then Gypsy kissed him, and he was awake again and managed to shut down the core with a 0 on the countdown clock. Then after Gypsy was snatched, Despero and Triumph flew around above Paris looking for her signal, and on that mission the Despero mind started to overpower Elrond, and so on the case of Baron von Mahler, his evil side started taking hold. Despero took von Mahler inside his mind and beat him to death with a wooden bat. Later in the battle with Mistech, Despero shot her in the face while yelling, "Death to all enemies!" His team looked at him shocked, so Despero told them his gun was on stun. Then after rescuing Gypsy, they jumped into a fight between Mistech and Damage before their headquarters was destroyed, and she escaped. And then Despero's mind took hold as he saw on TV a guy named Eddie the Terminator get immunity in a criminal hit-and-run trial where a 9-year-old girl died. Despero burst into Eddie's apartment and shot him in the face point blank. And he then went and broke a guy out of prison in the electric chair as he was innocent. And Despero then donned a gold undersea battle rig to take out an oil rig that was hurting the environment, but then had to save the people on board. That's when he confronted another bounty hunter named Gamoran. He was captured and Martian Manhunter came to rescue him, but in a surprise decision, Elrond came out and said that he was innocent, and confident in this knowledge, he would go with Gamoran to stand trial. Despero was chained up and sent to Intergalactic Circuit Court, while the rest of the Justice League Task Force monitored the proceedings, and John Jones prepared to testify on Despero's behalf. Martian Manhunter went inside Despero's mind again, and there, Despero looked like an old man now, worn down, and he revealed to his friend the mental war he'd been waging lately. From there it was a mess. The court was attacked, the judge taken hostage, and Despero attacked by Gamoran and the Zealots at the same time. They got away, and Despero linked up with the JLTF in the final issues of that series, dressed like Santa Claus, and he gave Gamoran what he was owed for his bounty. In 1998, Despero killed a lady, then killed and ate a bear before Elrond regained control. He was still fighting for power over the mind. Elrond quickly lost it again, and Despero declared he was reborn. On his new rampage, Supergirl ran into him. He overpowered Supergirl and mind-controlled her for a moment before she then overpowered the Red Behemoth with her newly acquired angelic powers. That's when Elrond came out again, and the two talked for a while. And later, Supergirl went supernova and destroyed Despero's form after Elrond subsided and Despero came back. And in 2003, Despero's mind formed again on another plane and met a guy named Johnny Starro who wanted revenge on the JSA. The two made a pact and used Dr. Bedlam to open a portal, and so Despero came back a villain in Virtue and Vice disguised as Lex Luthor to attack the Earth with a massive psychic attack that even interrupted the JLA-JSA Thanksgiving, while Johnny Starro hit the Rock of Eternity and freed the deadly sins on Earth. As he revealed himself in the ruins of the Oval Office, Despero hung an American flag over his shoulders like a cape. Green Arrow hit Despero in the face with a gas arrow and took him down. Then they all battled, and it was Johnny Starro and his stare that finally stopped Despero. In the Justice League Unlimited comic book, Despero teamed up with Brainiac to fight the JLA, though the pair lost. And then, in the fallout of Final Crisis in 2005, the JLA argued about mind-wiping when Despero cleared the minds of the secret society of supervillains whose minds had been altered after they learned all the identities of the JLA members. He fought them all, managing to control people like Batman. Red Tornado joined the fight too, but it was finally Zarana who was able to take Despero down this time. That's when Hal Jordan took Despero and brought him to the planet Oa for adjudication and sentencing for his crimes. A couple years later, Despero showed up in Booster Gold's second volume, now part of the villainous Time Stealers, to fight both Rip Hunter and Booster Gold. Despero appeared next in the Trinity weekly series as a projection to Tarot at first, as a bloodthirsty warlord conquering a planet where he began to activate a cosmic gateway. He then battled Kanja Ro and conquered a moon called Gretchen. It was a Pyrrhic victory for Despero's army, having lost 12,000 men in the fight, but he got his archway of eons. Suddenly, Morgan Le Fay and Enigma appeared in a dream and asked Despero if he'd want to be a lord of creation. They took Despero to Le Fay's castle to plot how to reorder the entire universe. The Trinity showed up though and battled them, blowing up LaFay's castle at the same time. But then it turns out that Kanjar had captured Despero and switched places with him just before LaFay and Enigma approached Despero. This angered Despero and he broke free, rallied his army, and hunted down Ro. Outside of Earth, on the way to intercept Ro, Despero's armada was confronted by Green Lantern, and a battle erupted. Instead of dying, Ro struck a deal with Despero to help him find something called a cosmic egg. Later, Despero joined the Dark Trinity to fight, and they became godlike as Krona influenced the fundamental energies around Earth. And then they took down LaFay, Enigma, and their team, the Crime Syndicate of America, with Despero fighting Warhound and trying to crush Morgan Le Fay's face in his hand. Despero was stopped when they all struck a deal, to Kanjar Ro's dismay. Despero and the villains went to see Krona, and again another fight broke out. And then as they struck a deal with Krona, the Dark Trinity showed up again at the same time that Despero's armada filled the airspace above the battleground. Then Morgan Le Fay's Dreambound turned on them and attacked Despero, but they escaped and continued on their quest for the World Soul. Enigma turned and Despero impaled him with a giant metal spear. Then Morgan turned on him until the Trinity finally managed to stop the villainous trio. In Rebels Volume 2 in 2009, Despero went back to Kalinor, where Vril Drox reached out to him for help. Despero attacked the JLA once again, which is when Zatanna showed up for the assist and to warn them about the Black Lantern Corps. So Despero joined Vril Drox in his fight against Starro the Conqueror's forces, which is when Despero was beheaded. Vril took Despero's head off the spear it was impaled on, yet the head turned out to still be alive. Despero's head made a deal with Vox while Despero regrew his body, got this weird shape before getting his full size back again. And then Despero teamed up with Adam Strange's faction to take down Starro the Conqueror. Starro overpowered them all and then used his fingers to crush Despero's third eye and put a Starro on Despero's face. Then when Adam Strange's rebels took down Starro the Conqueror, all the starfish fell off, including the one on Despero, so Despero was freed of control. And then Despero invited the rebels to Kalinor to watch Starro be executed, and it was very public, and as Despero prepared to separate Starro's head from his body, Starro was freed. In the 23rd issue of 2010 Super Friends, Despero teamed up with Mongol to find 3 magical artifacts that would give them control over all the DC Universe's magic, and so the Super Friends teamed up to stop them. And in 2013, after Flashpoint reset the DC Universe, Despero's first appearance in this new reality was with summer 2013's Justice League issue 19. By this year, Despero was in Belle Reve prison, but during a massive prison break, he wound up at the former JLA headquarters in Happy Harbor to be recruited by the Crime Syndicate, which led into an event called Forever Evil. In Forever Evil, Despero went after Martian Manhunter and Stargirl. He intercepted them both, crushing Martian Manhunter and dragging Stargirl deep down into the icy water below them. Thinking he killed Stargirl, he again attacked Martian Manhunter, and the pair fought a savage battle in the snow. Despero beat him to a pulp, then went after Stargirl again. Despero confined Stargirl to a prison he made with his mind, but Stargirl was rescued when the entire JLA showed up to stop Despero in what turned out to be a big crazy illusion. Manchester Black then wanted to recruit Despero, who was then incarcerated at a Supermax prison, to destroy the Teen Titans, but that turned out to be an illusion too. Where he actually was back on his home planet. Adam Strange told Hawkman this, who thought he was still locked away on Earth, comatose and sealed away in a prison. Upon hearing this, Cyborg went to Belle Reve prison to look for Despero's body, but he found it missing. On Kalinor, Despero reconquered it. The people kneeled before Despero once more. Adam, Hawkman, a Green Lantern, and his patrol partner then flew to Kalinor, where they found Despero murdering everyone. His people built Despero a device on the planet Ron, which imbued Despero with even greater power, and a now winged Despero leveled up his size and evil nature and was now set on taking over Thanagar for the nth metal there. He ended up battling with Hawkman ripping his arm off in the fight. Hawkman stabbed Despero with his sword while Adam Strange blasted Despero with his jetpack. Adam Strange destroyed the nth metal machine, which allowed Hawkman to cleave Despero's face in half. Hawkman ended up dying, but Despero, though defeated, reformed himself. In 2019's Young Justice, Despero was in Jacksonville, Florida fighting Wonder Girl after trying to attack a Star Labs facility. And later in 2019, Despero was imprisoned in 6th Dimension but broke free when Shane blasted the cells apart to free the Justice League. Then Guy Gardner made a construct of Despero in Doomsday Clock issue 9 when the heroes stood against Dr. Manhattan on the moon. Another time on the moon, there was a robot version of Despero in 2020 for an all-out brawl in Batman Superman issue 14. And then during Death Metal, Despero was playing cards with Robin, Magpie, and Croc in the hellscape that was once Themyscira before Batgirl called Robin away. And then in the Crime Syndicate limited series, a Despero of Earth 3 got a lantern ring for his own from the Emerald Knight. And in 2022, Despero cameoed on a computer screen suspect list in Detective Comics. And so Despero goes on, continuing to be a part of the ongoing DC Universe stories, both animated live action and in comic book form. And so with that, that's a wrap on this one, my friends. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and you'll be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.